Hi there, my name is Greer Klepacki, and this is my video essay number 3. For this video essay, we were asked to talk about postmodernism and really relate it to a relevant example in our modern world. Before doing that, I did want to introduce what postmodernism really is versus modernism, and then I can kind of dive into my example. Modernism really has to do with thinking about like grand narratives and really thinking about tradition more so. And postmodernism really relates to the idea that we're abandoning these grand narratives and that we're a little more questioning of the things around us. So essentially, when I think of postmodernism, I thought of Baudrillard, which Baudrillard largely talks about wanting to suggest a postmodern world, thinking about things like the simulation and how we can only really know, what's in front of us and not really know the truth. Largely, Baudrillard talks about things like things that are present and available to us, and those are the things we kind of take for granted, and we don't really consider, the real things that are going on in the world. So essentially, it reminded me a lot of The Matrix. That's not my example, but I just thought it was, important to think about how Baudrillard's work essentially inspired things like The Matrix. And actually, my example is sort of similar to The Matrix. Today, I wanted to talk about Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer. It is a visual album. So, included with my project, I've included a link to watch the video because I do think it's really important for someone who's grading me to watch it. But I did want to talk just a little bit about it because it's an incredible video and I hope everybody gets to watch it. So, in the video, Janelle Monáe talks about a world, basically like a dystopian world where people are being turned into computers. Essentially, people that are different or non-conforming essentially are marked as dirty computers, and once they're marked as dirty, they must be cleaned. So essentially, they're cleaned by the Nevermind, which is a system that cleanses you of your memories, of your life experiences, and basically just makes you another cog in the machine, so to speak. Through the video, Monáe touches on a lot of topics that are really important. It talks a lot about things like racism and the fact that even in like a postmodern world, a lot of the like modern or like traditional conceptions wouldn't be erased. And I think that's really important to discuss. Obviously, Janelle Monáe is a Black woman, and so it's really powerful coming from someone who has had that real life experience of racism. So in the video, Monáe talks a lot about racial inequality, gender inequality, and the fact that a lot of the inequalities that existed in pre-postmodernism world still exists in the postmodern time, even if it disguises itself in a different way or a different form. Monáe also talks about the fact about the American dream and really tries to deconstruct that and basically make space for people who weren't included in the grand narrative of the American dream to be included, which I do think is really important. Monáe talks a lot about, adding transgender or non-binary people or Black people, basically minorities into the American dream, in her song Crazy Classic Life, which is included in the video. It talks a lot about, how as a Black woman, she's not an American nightmare, rather she's living the American dream, and I think that that's one of my favorite lines from the video and the song, and I think it's really important to include in a, short synopsis. Another thing that Monáe talks about is really, conformity, and that's perhaps like the last big thing I wanted to touch on. Monáe talks a lot about, non-conformity and how in a postmodern world that's what the focus tends to be on, and that's what really becomes like the acute point of focus. In Dirty Computer, Monáe really showcases people who, look different than the norm or who really don't function in society the way that society wants them to. And I generally think that's very important when considering living in a postmodern world. We think of, postmodern world as freedom and not having to conform and really being able to be who we are, but Monáe is also saying that even if we are able to be who we are, there still will be, discrimination and inequality and injustices, so I still think that that's really important to consider. Ultimately, I love this video, as I mentioned earlier, and I really hope everyone gets the chance to see it. Again, as I mentioned, I did include a link in my project because I would really like whoever's grading me to really watch it. Even just the first 10 minutes, honestly, will get you a really good idea of what it's about. And you'll be able to see a lot of the examples I talked about in the first 10 minutes. And in conclusion, I just wanted to say that I loved this project, and I think that it's really incredible to consider living in a postmodern world and, can we really ever conceive what's real or what's not? And I do think that Janelle Monáe's Dirty Computer does a great example of breaking down postmodernism in both a present, and future setting. Thank you very much.